Hi again, it's Mary Dacey. Um, I'm sorry I didn't do this earlier because it's technically now Saturday, but this is my Friday post. Um, I am not saying what day. Yesterday I said, well, I can't remember, but I said it was August 14th post, but actually it was the 15th, so difficulties with my brain. Um, what I want to talk about today, again, not really following the storyline as much as talking about symptoms. Um, I told you about the chronic fatigue and the fibromyalgia, which was diagnosed in my early 40s. And before that, when I was a teenager, I had psoriasis or seborrhea in my scalp from being nervous around my mother. And then right after I got married, I had all kind of stomach problems because everything that happened would just go right to my stomach, and I was in the hospital probably more than once, but suffered for years with acute gastritis, which later they said was irritable bowel syndrome, which is always mostly brought on by stress. But the thing I want to have people understand is that after you get a diagnosis, you really should not stop looking for more answers on your own. And I say this because of subsequent diagnosis. If I had known sooner, there quite possibly might have been things that could have been done to prevent where I am today. So one of the things about 20 years ago, I would say around 2000, I started breaking teeth. And a lot of times, I think we all tend to make excuses instead of thinking that we have a problem. I know when I was in my early 40s, and I would be so tired on a Saturday just from doing errands that I just thought I was getting older. But it turns out that the radiation from the cancer treatments that I had toasted my thyroid. And when I finally went to the doctor and found out why I was so tired and he put me on medication, it was like a new lease on life. And then when I went back for my follow-up, I was telling him how happy I was, like I could stay up a whole day. And he said, well, you're going to get happier because I'm going to increase it because your function was down to practically zero. So when my teeth started breaking about 20 years ago, I excused it as you age, the fillings from all of us that were born in the early 50s and didn't have fluoride in the water, the fillings were shrinking, and as that happened, the teeth would break, and so I'd have to go in and get a tooth capped. But it started getting absolutely ridiculous. My teeth would just break and break and break. And I started making jokes. The dentist I was going to, I was working in Chicago, and I had a lot of my doctors were in Chicago because it was easier for me to get there. By the time I'd get home from work, it would be maybe 7 o'clock or so, and everything was closed as far as doctor appointments. So the dentist I was going to at the time in Chicago had been maybe on his 4th marriage, maybe more. And I started making jokes to my husband that I think he must be making this up because he has so much alimony to pay. I just couldn't believe that all these teeth were breaking. And I would get them capped, and it cost a lot of money. And then those teeth would break. I've had some teeth that have broke 4 times after they've been capped. I've had to have it redone. And over the year, well, I've always been thirsty my entire life. I was born thirsty. I've never felt like I had enough to drink. And if you put liquid in front of me, I would inhale it, drink after drink after drink, even just water. I mean, if it's there, it's going down. And then the dry eyes I attributed to having the radial K early. That starts it. But that was getting worse also. And then I started with what I consider a tic, where I was doing all kind of things with my mouth, and people would ask me, like, why are you making those faces? And I'd stop and I'd say, I guess I've been doing this for a while now, and I don't even realize I'm doing it. Eventually, I wound up with a white spot on the tip of my tongue. And my doctor sent me to an ENT because he thought perhaps I had a cancer starting. I mean, I already had a history of cancer. And the ENT said no, but he did suggest that I get a surgery, which was sort of like a balloon surgery, because I was always sick with sinus infections. And back then, my kids were no longer living home, and I was traveling some. And every trip we took, I'd be sick. As soon as I get off the plane, I feel like I'm coming down with a flu or virus. It would go into a 3-week infection of sinus infection. But these things happen so gradually that it's not dawning on you. So after my doctor had sent me to an ENT and I had the surgery for the sinus, it was like a balloon surgery, and it worked fabulous. However, the white tip on the end of my tongue still bothered him. And he sent me to his own doctor, his own dentist. And this doctor was evaluating me and trying to think up all kinds of reasons why I would have a callus on the tip of my tongue. And this was at the same time when I went to get my eyes checked, And the eye doctor that was filling in for my regular doctor had sent me to another doctor who told me I had Sjogren's disease. And it turns out that Sjogren's disease robs you of your salivary system. When I went back and told the dentist, he said, in all his years of practice, and he's the same age as I am, he had only ever had one other Sjogren's patient. So what I want to say, just to help people as they go down the road on the same journey that I've been on, if you have a diagnosis of whatever, make sure you sign up for groups that talk about whatever it is you're diagnosed with, such as the Smart Patients or an autoimmune group. There's so many of them out there. And by engaging in these forums, you're made aware that this is happening to you when you're not even realizing it. You're just, it's so slow, you're just going about your business unconscious of what is happening. And at the same time that I got the Sjogren's diagnosis, I was also diagnosed with lupus. And it's extremely hard when you have symptoms of all these different things to try to figure out which box it goes to. Is this a Sjogren's side effect? Is this a lupus side effect? Is it a fibromyalgia side effect? And that is why it's so helpful to join groups that have open forums of questions and answers. And by going down and reading these things and looking up what other people's diagnosis is, you start to realize that, I'm doing this because it's now this other issue. One of the things that happened because I have Sjogren's is when I was put on medication, I told you that they took me off after 2.5 years because it had affected my eyes. I also had my lungs affected. And I would cough all the time. And as this progressed, and eventually I was sent to a pulmonologist for breathing issues, and they tested me for everything, and the only thing he could find out was that I had weak lungs, but he couldn't figure out why, and sent me to the neurologist. And after the 6 tests of the neurologist, which I revealed on Tuesday what that diagnosis was, which is the ANS and the dysautonomia, in researching those, I realized that a lot of the times that I just think I'm coughing, it happens a lot when I'm eating or drinking, and I'm not coughing, I'm literally choking, because ANS controls swallowing and things, and now that those nerve pathways are impaired, things that my body would normally do, it's not doing. So I'm choking now at times. And there's a number of other issues, and I'll get into them at a later date, but I just wanted to share this much for today, and I hope to see you tomorrow, and I hope you'll share this in the hope that other people can get together and figure out what is wrong with them, why they have these symptoms, why the doctors can't tell them what's wrong with them. And that's my goal here, to share the journey. And hopefully I'll be back tomorrow. Good night.